Blessings, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. And it is a real honor to have as my guest, Father, I want to say this right, Father Deacon Ananias Sorum. And I have a quick bio on Father. He's a PhD, wow, is CEO, founder, and president of Patristic Faith. Father is an Orthodox apologist and professor of philosophy at Fullerton College and Carroll College, right? He has a BA in liberal arts from Thomas Aquinas College, TAC, together with an MA and PhD in philosophy, epistemology, philosophy of science, well, philosophy of mind from University College Dublin. Wow. And Dublin in Ireland, Father. Wow. Okay. And I encourage everyone to go to Patristic Faith. Is it patristicfaith.com?
Correct.
It's really good. That's how I discovered your work, Father. And I have interviewed Father Turbo Qualls.
Good.
And he's one of your contributors. He's awesome.
Longtime friend too. In fact, when I was first received, I have this beautiful picture of before Father was Father Turbo Qualls, when he was just altar server. There's this beautiful picture of me receiving my first communion in the Orthodox Church, and he's holding up the cloth, and I got to send that to him. It's just interesting to see how, God puts certain people in your life, and that the fruits of that blossoming later, and in God's providence. So glory to God.
Yeah, I interviewed him, and I immediately had a real sort of kinship with him. I felt a close brotherhood with him because I think we've had sort of similar histories, and they need to come up with a new term for him. He's beyond based.
Yeah, that's right.
Because I think people that have like Father, who have sort of been on the dark side, I think they have a real keen understanding of things and how the world works.
Yeah.
Maybe as opposed to people who've had maybe a different, more circumscribed sort of life. So
yeah, God uses that. I was thinking about my own life too, and just, trying to help people, that all the mistakes that I'd made, and, terrible things from my youth, that God takes what men intended for evil and makes it good. He appropriates that. And I see that with Father Turbo. I see it in my own life of being able to use that in our ministry to actually help people. That it's like, I understand, he understands like where people are coming from and how to kind of address those issues. So glory to God.
Yeah, maybe I'll use this as kind of a segue, maybe to ask you about your conversion too. It's somewhat limited, but in my experience with Orthodoxy, I've met a lot of converts, a lot of male converts, who had kind of an interesting journey to Orthodoxy. They all kind of remind me of, well, I kind of feel like my patron in Orthodoxy is Father Seraphim Rose, but kind of were searching for a good part of their life, and then found Orthodoxy, which is it's interesting. They in this modern world, they found a very ancient faith. So
Yeah, I've thought about that. Have you, when you hear the critique that somebody says, well, you're just Christian because that's the way you're brought up and you live in a time and culture in which you just inherit that, like as if it's, not a choice. And I find it really interesting then to point out that, well, you can find a more difficult time, place, and period to find orthodoxy, living in, modern contemporary America, where it's less than 1% of the religious population, to be able to find that goes in the face of all those kinds of arguments. It's a great kind of sed contra.
Yeah. I mean, because I like Father, if just talking about Father Seraphim Rose, he was raised sort of, I don't know, his upbringing was very strange, sort of Pentecostal. His father didn't really practice much, but I remember his mother took him to various Protestant churches, or sort of drifted around. And then he got into Zen, Buddhism, moved to San Francisco as a young man, like I did, and then found Orthodoxy. And I see, and the same thing with me is that I was raised Roman Catholic, but very nominally Roman Catholic, and I drifted around quite a bit too. So back to Roman Catholicism, and then now to Orthodoxy. So I was curious, Father, could you talk a little bit about your upbringing? And then I know I heard in another podcast that you did that you were raised in Southern California, and then you went. It was interesting in your bio that you went to TAC, Thomas Aquinas College. For people who don't know, it's Santa Paula. It's in Santa Paula, California. I think Ventura County. So it's north of LA. I visited there many years ago, but it's got a reputation. I mean, within Roman Catholicism, it has been very conservative.
Yes.
Small liberal arts college. So, I mean, it's interesting. How did you end up there, and then how did you convert to Orthodox?
So being born in Minnesota and from a Norwegian American family, on my dad's side, who was also born in Minnesota, we're all Lutheran, just kind of born into that. And then when we moved to California when I was younger, from Minnesota, we lived with my mother's my grandparents on my mother's side for a little bit, and then we got our own house literally just like a street over. And they were, on my mother's side, my grandfather and grandmother were Church of Christ, which is restorationalism, Joseph Campbellite kind of. And my mom, after a while, kind of broke away from that, and then, pushed away from that and started going to Calvary Chapel. And as a kid, you just follow your kind of parents wherever you go, as far as church and whatever your religious affiliations are. And so that's Calvary Chapel's kind of a non-denominational evangelical. It comes out of Foursquare, kind of Assemblies of God, Pentecostal. But then the Calvary Chapel movement was, as it started off with Chuck Smith, is kind of like this Jesus freak kind of revival, tent revival. It became more kind of conservative and less kind of charismatic and stuff like that. But that was the roots of that. And then my mother pulled me out of public schools and sent me to Calvary Chapel. In junior high through high school, just worried about like the people I was hanging out with and the influences in public school. So I grew up in that. And when I'd say probably around 14, 15, 16, you start to develop a lot of your own kind of characteristics. And I really have always kind of been anti-authoritarian, anti-authority, should I say, and then questioning things. I didn't know it then, but it was, I had a philosophical spirit. Thank God that I found a career that matches that, that kind of questioning and skepticism and not taking things at face value. But as I started to go through, I started to kind of question these. There was a lot of things in the evangelical Protestant religion that rubbed me the wrong way. And it's difficult when you're a kid, you haven't really acquired the kind of philosophical hardware, conceptual hardware to kind of work through these things. So they just usually come off in a very kind of emotive, like, I'm upset, I don't like that, but you can't really put your thumb on what it is exactly. But I do know that it actually led me to questions and started to kind of think through this stuff at a young age. And I wasn't getting any good answers to these questions with respect to the things that I thought was off. And then they made a big mistake. Calvary Chapel brought, for our Bible class, they brought in an apologetics, like our senior year of Bible, they brought in an apologetics teacher on Fridays to teach Christian apologetics and logic and critical thinking. And I just ate it up. And this guy was great, because like all the questions I thought were like real gotchas that nobody at the Calvary Chapel could answer, he was just like, that's super easy, blah, 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 blah. And he just spouted off. And I was like, wow, that's so Christianity can be rational and intelligent, and we can think through these issues. And I think I just kind of I kept going with that. And one of the questions I think that started me on my long road to eventually convert to Orthodoxy was first just kind of looking at worship. The kind of contemporary Christian worship, evangelical, really bothered me when I was younger. And, you know, I was always kind of given these subjective answers that, well, it's who are we to judge how you worship God? And I remember at 16, 17 going, well, can you get up there and do a mosh pit and like do death metal, or like, and they were like, no, that would be inappropriate. And I was I'm like, okay, so you have a standard, like, so it isn't just a free for all, do whatever you want. And that kind of gave me hope that, well, I'd like to find out what that standard is. Like, what is, and these questions started occurring to me around 17, 18. What is church? You know, some people were saying, hey man, church is the ocean, surfing with God, or me hiking, or me talking philosophy and apologetics. And I remember coming to the conclusion very early on that, no, those are things Christians do, but that's not church. And I think I just kept going with that question until I got to the point that I realized it has to be centered around the Eucharist, just looking historically. And I came to that very early age. And I pushed away. I realized that there wasn't this kind of tradition. There wasn't really a celebration of the Eucharist and kind of non-denominational. There was no notion of sacraments. And so I pushed away from that and then went to Thomas Aquinas College, really being kind of open to converting to Roman Catholicism.
Wow.
But I wanted to learn, you know, I want to have good reasons if I do something. And I've always felt that way ever since I was a little kid, when I was asking, why come we do this, or why this? I just wanted good reasons to believe something or to do or act. And so likewise, when I went to Thomas Aquinas College, I wanted to study, it was presenting, you know, Roman Catholicism was presenting as the church, the historical church, the sacraments rich in tradition and symbolism, and these various things. And it was, at that time, I wasn't really aware of Orthodoxy. So it was just kind of a dichotomy. What's either kind of Protestantism and evangelicalism or Roman Catholicism. That's kind of what I thought when I went there. And I went and I studied church history and Roman Catholicism. And at the same time, it was actually there that I was first introduced to Orthodoxy and had attended liturgies, divine liturgies. And so I had that kind of on my radar, that there wasn't just two options, there was a third option. And so it just took me a long time to get there. about 14 years later after all of that. But I want to keep rambling. I mean, feel free to ask any other questions about that, and then we can keep going on about.
No, it's fascinating. One of the things that popped into my head was that you were pondering these sort of big existential questions in your teens. I mean, to me, that sounds unusual. I mean, when I was 18, I was worried about like what Madonna was doing, you know. I had no sort of contemplation of God or
Yeah, I felt
any.
like a freak, actually. Like, people were like, what are you talking about? Although I did have a couple friends that were like right on, like they were asking the same kinds of questions. So I could have these kinds of conversations with certain friends. So I didn't feel too weird. But most people were like, what? Why would you even think that?
Well, you were already a deep thinker. Did you ever have, because this kind of relates back to when we were talking about Father Turbo Qualls, did you ever have a prodigal son phase where you drifted away and doubted and
Yeah, it's a great question. I never doubted God.
okay, well,
I don't know why, but that seemed very real to me. I doubted what I was told about God. I doubted people. I was skeptical of people and institutions. And, I lived a wayward life. And I remember people saying, well, you can't get into psychedelics and be called a Christian. And I'm like,
okay,
what are you
fine.
telling me, that I'm supposed to throw God out? And I saw like friends that would do that. I'm going to choose to live this life. So, and I've been told that's incompatible with God. So I'm going to throw God. I'm like, I don't know that. I'm like, I really don't know what I'm doing. I'm just trying to find these things out. But I knew deep down in my heart, I'm like, well, the last thing I want to do is throw the guiding light out. I'm like, I don't want to get rid of God. I'm like, maybe what I'm doing and living the lifestyle is wrong. But the only way that I'll be able to figure that out is if I stay with God, if I keep God. So yeah, I never think I really ever kind of questioned God or the Trinity or anything like that. It was always, these people are crazy and they don't know what they're talking about, and I don't want anything to do with them. That was kind of more of and I unfortunately lived, an incorrect moral life when I was younger. That was kind of my prodigal.
Was this after you were at TAC or during?
No,
or
before in high school and
okay.
right out of high school.
So, Father, you were doing psychedelics in high school?
Yeah,
Oh,
about 15, 16
oh my
to
gosh.
20, 21.
Okay, I did. Now, see, now we have something in common. I feel a kinship with you because I did those as well. I was really. This is why I have such an affinity with Father Seraphim. Is that he got into Zen? Who was that guy he was into? Alan Watts.
Alan Watts, yeah.
And then I was very much into who's that guy? Terence McKenna, and
that mushroom.
and then I met Timothy Leary.
Oh wow.
Kind of a sad figure at that time. He was signing what were those things? Acid papers or blot papers?
Oh, blotter. Yeah, that was weird. That became like a whole art thing that people just like, they wouldn't even use them. They just
he was doing that. He was kind of, at that time, he was
blotter art. That's what it was.
Yeah, he was quite old, and I had horrible experiences with hallucinogenics. So I mean, that's a whole other thing. But yeah, people, I try not to be judgmental towards everyone because I've kind of been there and I've sort of been everywhere, but people are searching, and
that's all. Yeah, that's what I felt like. Look, I made a mistake. I went the wrong way, but I was sincere. When I pushed away from evangelical, like in high school, I didn't like that stuff. my religion for me, unfortunately, became psychedelics. Like I was very religious about it.
Wow.
Um, I really like. I even tied it to like apologetics. I was like, this is great. Like this is super easy to convert people.
So Father, did you think that that was expanding your mind, those sort of things? It was, yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly. Um, and for a
Your
long
your
time when
your
I was
con
younger,
yeah,
I wouldn't
your,
ever do substances that I thought dulled my senses. Like I stayed away from alcohol. Well, a lot of my friends were always drinking and kind of partying. That seemed incorrect to me. That I thought, no, you if you're going to be using substances, I thought that it should be mind revealing, mind opening, which is the kind of notion of psychedelic.
yeah.
And that every time I had taken a psychedelic, my mind immediately went to God and started thinking about theological things. So I was like, wow, these go. I thought they went hand in hand, and I was even using them to convert people. And
No,
so,
no, no, my consciousness went right to demons.
oh wow, no, I've had I'd have bad. I guess I thought too that it just opened and it does. It opens yourself to the entire noetic realm. So I knew there were demons. I knew, there were angels and that it was kind of dangerous and you could have a really bad time too. Anyways, so that was kind of from around 15 to about 21, and then I had an episode that really kind of changed my life that I was just like, this is ridiculous. I've got to
You
change
might,
my life.
do you mind telling what it was?
No, my best friend and my mentor was my grandfather on my mother's side. And we spent so much time, and when I lost him and saw him die, my world just came crumbling down. Death was no longer just kind of an abstract idea that we're all going to die. It's like I just lost my best friend and the person I loved the most in life, and just put everything in perspective. All these kind of ideas about death became palpable, that you're going to be there very soon, and what have you done with your life? And I thought a lot about, it wasn't just, do I think I'm doing the right thing? It then became, what would my grandfather want from me? How does he see me? Is this the sort of life that he wanted? And we think that way about those that we love. And in some sense, I mean, I feel like my grandfather laid his life down for me, that he had to pass in order for me to get out of that. And
How did, how did, how
so
did, how did he die, Father?
a heart attack. Yeah.
Oh no.
I remember I was taking some classes at Orange Coast College, and he was just lived around the corner from me.
Oh.
And we got a call that your grandfather's had a heart attack. And I went over there, and he was gone. It just crushed me. And I knew he was such like an amazing person, and he held the whole family together.
Wow.
As the kind of patriarch. And I was just like, I don't know how we're going to live without him. And but I remember, I had dreadlocks at the time. I cut my dreadlocks, and I made a conscious decision at that time to put away all those childish things, and that I would just study and go to school and become something that my grandfather would be proud of.
What did he think of you with the dreadlocks?
Oh, he was like, he thought it was weird.
Okay.
Like,
He wasn't like disappointed or
probably,
no.
I don't know. Like, if I was my grandfather, I would have been like, what in the world? But he was
But
just so loving and patient. You know what I mean? Um, but
Well,
my grandmother was always giving me a hard time. She's like, they look like turds on your head.
yeah, they do. So, oh, but that's such a blessing that you had that relationship. I'm a little jealous because I never knew my grandparents on either side. Ones were in Italy, and then the ones here in the United States were deceased. So that's really special that you had that.
Yeah, and then it was great because all the people I partied with, they didn't recognize me because I look so different without and I took math, science, and philosophy classes, and that's all I did. I didn't go out. I just would put on records of Bach and drink coffee and and I just gave myself an educational kind of foundation because I was a loser in high school. Like, you know, I wasn't a good student at all. And so I used that time to kind of make up for all the loss of, high school and junior high. And then I transferred to Thomas Aquinas College. So then I had got the foundation. It's like, okay, I could do a program like this. And so, yeah, but it became, at Thomas Aquinas College, it became, there were issues with the papacy that obviously, like, I was struck. I'm like, this doesn't. Trying to think what other issues as I started studying further. Well, obviously, as a Protestant, like their particular conception of the Theotokos and Mary, the Immaculate Conception bothered me. I'm trying to think what other issues. So what I did is I didn't convert to Orthodoxy at that time, even though it was on my mind. I made up my mind that I would never become Roman Catholic after studying. I'm like, no, this is, and the other thing too is I saw a doctrinal development. That was another big issue. And I'm like, wait, you're promising me that this is the church of the first millennium and it doesn't change. And it's like, but it does. Like, it's constantly, and that I'm like, no, these people don't know what they're talking about. And so I went back to what I thought was best. By that time, I had come to appreciate from my study of church history a real presence of the Eucharist. Remember, I'd realized church must be centered around that.
Yeah.
And then, I thought it was just a memorial or symbolism being brought up. Until studying church history at Thomas Aquinas College, I'm like, no, there's a real like Christians have always believed that. And so I thought, well, Lutheranism's the best option. So I went back.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, well, I was like, well, I'm not going to become Roman Catholic. And God forgive me in my pride, but I prided myself in being very rational. So now I'm doing apologetics and I was like, I'd already thought the Roman Catholics were like superstitious. I'd constantly find them putting like scapulars and prayer cards under my dorm pillows and stuff. And I'm like, what are you doing?
Or under the mattress.
Under the mattress, yeah. And they were like, oh, it's gonna like convert this dirty Protestant to Roman Catholicism. I'm like, you guys are this is really really strange. Then when I went to the Orthodox, I'm like, well, they're even farther out there. Like, they were talking about mirror streaming icons. And I was like, I like the Orthodox. It always appealed to me, but they just seemed too superstitious. To me. And that's because I had embraced a sort of kind of rationalism of a scholastic rationalism that, and you have to keep in mind, Lutherans are very, like, they represent this kind of scholastic kind of rationalism, anti miracles and stuff like that. I mean, they're very suspicious if somebody's like, I had this miracle happen. A Lutheran would be like, I mean, Lutherans get weird if you even reach over the aisle to like shake somebody's hand during the service. They're like, oh, real kind of stern German, Scandinavian kind of like, keep it in order. Nobody talk about miracles or even move too much in the service. You know what I mean? So I think that played a part in seeing that you just perceived Roman Catholics and Orthodox as anti kind of rational and kind of superstitious. And
Yeah, you don't have that nationalism or in Protestantism, no.
Yeah.
Sort of devotion, all the devotionals, they just don't have them. Like iconography would be very foreign to them. So
yeah.
I mean, I'm not necessarily representation of God, but just a reverence for an image would be odd to them. So.
Yeah, and it's strange because in the Lutheran, we had like stained glass windows and even statues of like Christ. And so I guess the icons never really kind of bothered me because spending time, I didn't understand the theology of the icon. I just thought there was like religious art or something like that.
Me coming from Roman Catholicism, it didn't seem foreign at all. Now, through your study of religion and while you were at TAC, is that how you discovered, I mean, Orthodoxy? Is that how you did?
Sort of.
Okay.
There was an Orthodox priest. So I was involved in Orange County in an apologetics group. So even right before I went up to Thomas Aquinas College.
That was Protestant?
Not really, because there was an Orthodox priest there.
Oh, okay.
Like it was.
So it was like ecumenical. It was different people from different religions, or
yeah, like there were two groups. One was called Mars Hill, like St. Paul's, and that was actually led by Lutherans. The other one was called Dialogue, and as it suggests, it was atheists, agnostics, every possible religion you could imagine, and we would come and debate and talk about different ideas. It's where I was actually trained in presuppositional apologetics. So I learned like transcendental arguments for the existence of God from groups like that. And the group Dialogue is where there was a Orthodox priest. And that was my first exposure to, and then he was actually had a parish, St. Herman's in Ventura. And so you can imagine now I'm at Thomas Aquinas College and there was a group of Orthodox students. That priest would come up to, because Ventura wasn't that close. It was Oxnard, actually. Wasn't that far from Santa Paula, and he would come and hear confessions from and counsel the students. And I got interested while reading the Church Fathers and doing theology, and started attending some liturgies.
Was he OCA or what?
OCA, Father Paul, OCA, and then Thomas Aquinas College used to always say that, like, oh, it's not our purpose to convert people to Roman Catholicism. They just hope that the program will just naturally, you just read the great books and you see obviously that the truth lies in the Roman Catholic Church. But they definitely did, especially among the students. I think they encouraged the students to proselytize and put pressure on people to convert. And they saw me as like somebody like, we've got to get this Protestant to convert to Roman Catholicism. And they got upset when I started going to Orthodox liturgies. So then the school banned the Orthodox priest from coming onto campus, saying he was proselytizing. He wasn't at all.
That's not cool.
Now, what's hilarious, I'm like, you don't mess with God's people, because what's interesting, years later, God puts an Orthodox women's monastery literally on the edge of the campus, St. Barbara's Monastery. And now the kids are going over, they go over there and they pray. They have a little children's cemetery, and now they're trying to control them. They're like, don't go over there. Don't. Those are Orthodox, but you can't control them. I'm like, that's what happens when you mess with God's people. You'll put an Orthodox monastery right on your Papist border, right on the. So I found that was funny, but yeah, that was my first exposure, and I started kind of thinking through these issues. But it took a long time after that for me to come to Orthodoxy. And I think that what I had to do is go through a lot of suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And, for 10 years, our marriage, we went through hell. My wife became permanently and totally disabled. Epileptic seizures, her ovaries were damaged by the dot. Like, it's just everything possibly that could go wrong. And it just seemed like there was no hope.
I'm so sorry. Father, when were you married?
We got married in 2007.
So you were fairly young.
How old was I when I got married? That's a great question. So I've been married 14 years. And I'm turning 45. So yeah. I was in grad school. I think I've got my master's.
How did you meet your wife?
Oh, this is crazy. She went to Calvary Chapel with me, and I didn't even know her, it's weird because that's a small school. I mean, maybe we had like 350, 400 people in the entire school or something like that. And then after I graduated Thomas Aquinas College, and then I lived in South America for a year, and then I came back and was applying to grad schools. And then I met her. My friend was playing in a band, some music, and then I met her, and we dated that summer. She was going to law school at Loyola Marymount,
Jesuit, yeah, super uber liberal.
Yeah. Now, the law school obviously
was okay.
Yeah, it wasn't. But anyways, we decided, well, hey, I'm going to go to Ireland and do a master's, and she was finishing up law school, so we dated kind of long distance. And then when we finished our grad program, her in law and my master's, I came back and I married her, and then I took her with me back to Ireland to do my PhD.
Are you at this time, Father?
What's that?
Are you Orthodox at this time, Father?
Still Protestant. And we went through a whole Lutheran catechesis program too. Like, we were catechized in the Lutheran Church. We received what do they call that? Civil marriage, right? Where you go to the courthouse. And then I went to and had kind of a ceremony in the Lutheran Church, because I'm like, well, this can't just be secular and stuff like that. And then we moved to Ireland, and then she was going to do some grad work, LLM. She'd gotten at Trinity College in Dublin.
Wow.
And everything fell apart. Like, she had a spinal cord injury, an operation, and she just became totally disabled in excruciating pain and we just lost everything. And it was really hard in Ireland too. I got kicked out of the Lutheran Church.
Why?
For fighting.
Physically fighting, or
no,
or just fighting about theology?
So I came from the Missouri Synod, which was really conservative. They were a German church. Like, they actually did. So they were higher liturgical. I was actually kind of impressed. And then, but they were really liberal. So it was all about like women's ordination. They brought in like a woman pastor. It wasn't even a woman pastor. It was like a team. Her and her husband were the pastor. And I was like, what?
Oh, fun.
And then I got in an argument with one of the seminary, this girl that was a seminarian that was going to become a woman priestess, pastoress. And
I think
at that time, I don't know if you remember, this was probably, I don't know, 2005, 2006 or something like that. In the Lutheran churches in Atlanta, they were having some debates and whether they're going to open up the Lutheran churches for homosexual priests or pastors.
I do remember that.
And they were, our church that I was part of, that German church, that German Lutheran church, was sending people there. And I'm like, good. I'm like, it's about time that we put an end to this nonsense. And they were like everybody in the church was like, what? And I'm like, wow, we can't have sodomy in the church, right? Like, I was just like real.
I love that.
And they were like, no, we're sending people to argue the opposite.
Yeah.
And then I got upset, and never do this. Like, you want to make a German upset, just remind them of their history in World War II. I'm like, did you guys learn anything? I'm like, what is the matter with you German people? I'm like, you just bend to like and accept whatever the zeitgeist and culture of. I'm like, you just never learned anything from the Third Reich, did you? And they were just like, you're not welcome here.
Well, you know, the German Roman Catholics are insane too. So.
Yeah, that's right. They're like the craziest right now. They're doing, and I don't like, the Pope's just obviously turning a blind eye to that. And like all the trad cats are like, he'll do something. This is not allowed in Roman Catholic. I'm like, I'm not going to do anything.
How is
you're right.
How is your wife now, if I can ask?
She was healed. She was miraculously healed about 4 years ago. Yeah.
Whoa.
Isn't that crazy?
Is there any particular icon or saint or any?
Well, because of that, we made the patron saint of our home and my car. I have a patron saint for my car too. Saint Pantaleimon.
Ooh, yes, the healer. Yes,
the heal. Yeah, and
yes.
We've had miracles with that. When I went to Russia, I actually grabbed the monks, and I was like, hey, I just want to let you know your icon's streaming myrrh from Saint Pantaleimon, and but. Something started when I went to one of Elder Ephraim's monasteries in Candelia, Texas, Holy Archangels. With my wife, something happened there, and that kind of was a seed that started, and we started using. Met somebody, we were talking about like diet and health and stuff like that, and then. My wife would like, these doctors almost killed her. They had her like on fentanyl, Oxycontin, morphine, instant release,
my gosh,
like all this different stuff, Ambien to get to sleep, SSRIs, benzos for the anxiety. Because my wife also, like, even she wasn't even going through the pain. She had like social anxiety. She couldn't go in the backyard. She was afraid of like people looking at her, and
poor thing.
And then Ritalin to a mood elevator. It's amazing that they didn't kill her.
That is
so it's crazy when I think about. And I put all my trust in science and these doctors. I was just like, really, science, like that's the way through. So even when I was Orthodox, I still had this baggage with me left over, like ultra rationalistic, like science is the only way. And, we got to rid the church of superstition and all this weird stuff. And thank God he let me experience all that suffering. And by the way, so we still suffered when we came to the Orthodox Church, but that suffering and that breaking us down is what actually led me to open my heart and find orthodoxy. It wasn't just intellectual. Like I was reading stuff, but I couldn't see it until I was utterly broken and lost everything. Like had no job, no place to live, no hopes, no community. It's as painful as it is, a wonderful position to be in, because all your ideas of what you think about life and your philosophies don't mean anything. And I could see God. I begin to experience, when I went to liturgies, full-blown miracles. And I had a conversion. I don't know how to explain this, but a noetic experience in a liturgy that converted me and my wife. I came back, and my wife's like, we're not converting to the Orthodox Church, when I left liturgy, and I came back and I couldn't even speak. Like, and she was like, what the heck happened to you? And I'm like, and like there was energy. I'm telling you, there were like it affected her, and she started crying, and like all this stuff started going on. And she was like, I want to convert. I hadn't even made up my mind after that experience. Like I couldn't put my thoughts together. I was just like, and it was her actually kind of getting me, back into my senses of like, well, we got to convert to the Orthodox Church. And I was like, yeah, obviously. And then just, things began to, it took a long time, things don't just change overnight. Again, shedding a lot of like the erroneous philosophical baggage and idols that I had. And then it took, up until, 4 years ago for her to even be healed. And we used diet and the church and prayers, and I think it was all kind of part of that. And she's not on a single medication now. She's not in pain.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. I wanted, because you talked about suffering, and I love this book. It's called Living Without Hypocrisy. It's the elders of Optina in Russia. And I love this quote, because you talked about suffering, because I think suffering brings with it a sense of clarity. This is from Saint Nicholas of Optina. The lot of all those who wish to be saved is to suffer. Therefore, if we suffer, then let us rejoice, for our salvation is being carried out.
Amen. I was talking to
people aren't into suffering. I mean, rightly
it
so.
Turns out they're not into.
Not great, but
I just remind people, I'm like, there's no resurrection without a crucifixion, and that's for you too. That's not just for Christ. And like nobody's going to be saved without suffering. And I think about, just even all the heat, like I was telling people, all the heat and hate emails that I get for running Patristic faith, and people trying to get me fired from my job, contacting my work and stuff like that. And they're like, man, I wouldn't be able to handle that. I'm like, well, the good upshot of this is I'm spiritually and even intellectually a slothful person. I'd never be saved or get anywhere remotely near the kingdom through my actions. Like, I struggle. And so God does something really nice, and he allows me to be persecuted. He allows me to kind of go through these sufferings. And I'm like, if I'm ever going to make it, it's not going to be, because of the actions that my ascetic life. It's because of the suffering and persecutions. And so I try to embrace that. I'm like, that might be the only kind of rope that God's giving me to.
I hear you.
And maybe one day, I'm always trying to become better as far as spiritually and ascetically in my disciplines and stuff like that. But I just, when I introspect, I feel like such a failure. Like, I'm just like, I wish I could. So I'll take whatever help I can get. Is the way I kind of think about it.
I hear you, Father. My road to Orthodoxy has been pretty tortured. So
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I often wonder what God's plan is, because I think that a lot of times I believe that I know what his plan is, and then it turns out to be something completely different,
Yeah.
because for a long time I thought God's plan for me was Roman Catholicism, and that I could do good work there. And and then I started to question whether or not that was really where he wanted me. And then I started reading more and more about Father Seraphim Rose. Actually, I read everything I could get a hold of.
Is that what got you into, like, was that a major part of you finding?
I would say so. When I was living in San Francisco, there's the cathedral on Geary Street where John Maximovich is buried. And that's also where Seraphim Rose spent part of his time. His bookstore was near there. And I used to pass by that cathedral, and I wasn't religious at that time. I didn't know what it was. I actually thought it was a Muslim, Islamic, with the onion
Because
domes.
the onion domes.
I was so stupid. And when I was at Berkeley, and for some weird reason, I got into Russian iconography, and I was not Christian at all. And somebody in one of my classes said, "Oh, go to Joy Valhusaro." And I was like, "What is that?" "That's the cathedral in Geary." And I went in there, and I was just blown away by the beauty of it, because it's different seeing an icon in a book as to seeing it, where it belongs, in a church.
What was your
And
feeling when you saw St. John Maximovich in his
I kind of didn't understand I mean, I knew it was because somebody told me, but I didn't understand what it was. It was his remains, but
because he was an essential part in my conversion.
really,
When I came back from Ireland, my friend was going to an Orthodox church, and he had me over, and he's like, "What do you think about sola scriptura?" And I was like, "It's nonsense." Like, I'd already gotten to the point, like, which surprised him is and I'm like, "No, you need like authority." I'm still trying to work out what exactly apostolic succession meant and stuff like that. He was like, "Well, you should come to liturgy then with me." And that kind of reignited my research and investigating into Orthodoxy. And I remember, for some reason, maybe with like you with the icons, I got like really into researching incorruptibles. Now, my wife and I had been to Rome, and I saw what their incorruptibles, quote unquote incorruptibles, are. They were all like wax figures. Like they treated them. I'm like, well, how do we know that they're like incorruptible, right? Because I don't know if you've ever been to the Vatican, but like they have, and they just looked weird and fake. And then I started looking and contrasting that with Orthodox, and I'm like, it looks natural, like, but they're preserved somehow without preservatives. And my rationalistic mind couldn't wrap my head around it. Like, it was a stumbling block for me. I was like, what the heck? And my wife thought I was getting like morbid. She's like, "Why are you looking at pictures of all these dead bodies?" And I'm like, "Look at this. It's really weird." And I'm like, I can't figure it out. I'm like, and I was particularly obsessed with St. John Maximovich. I'm like, I just don't get it. I'm like, how is this possible? And like, I was reading about the stories. And then when I went to the liturgy, the very first icon I saw was St. John Maximovich. And the priest had a miracle with St. John Maximovich. The priest had the same spinal cord injury as my wife. And I'm like, well, this is getting weird. And so I brought my wife to be anointed by, you probably recognize, this from
yes.
Cathedral. And, it's just like from oil from the lampada. It doesn't have any, it smells like olive oil or something like that. So the priest comes out, to bless my wife because she was in excruciating pain, still suffering. We weren't Orthodox yet. And right when he said, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, it started smelling like myrrh and roses. And he started smiling. He's like, I've never experienced this, but he's like, we're having a miracle. And it filled the whole, started going out through the hallway. And so I knew that St. John Maximovich was doing something for us and helping us. And every time that I went up to the cathedral after converting, I could feel the energy coming off his body. I don't know how to explain it, but I would get close and I'd back off and it would decrease, and I'd get closer. And it was that same feeling that I got that first liturgy. It felt like all my emotions were just like going off. Like I was crying, like it was really, it's energy. I don't know how to explain it. It's beyond words. But so anyways, just kind of relating back to, obviously, St. John Maximovich, it was extremely helpful in bringing us into the Orthodox Church and healing us.
Take solace in your own persecution, because he certainly experienced that. I mean, from his own church. So
yeah,
there was a lot of bad scenes with lawsuits, and it's amazing that he just endured through all of that, often with a sense of humor. And
then remember also too, Saint Nectarios, very similar persecutions. Just Saint John Maximovich too.
I hate to start talking about your
let's move on. I'm sorry, but like
no. You know what? People, this tends to be a trend with me. Is it that people that I find interesting writers usually have very interesting lives?
Yeah.
So because I think whatever experiences that they've had, I mean, Jane Austen was a good writer, and she didn't move much from beyond her, county in England. But I think people that a lot of times, I think especially, are very in tune with the world, with contemporary situations. I think they've had. I think Father Turbo Qualls is a good example too. I think they've had struggles in their life. They've had, to deal with a lot. So
maybe that ties into the article too, because seeing all this faith that I put in science and modern medicine is like the most, and I'm not anti-science and anti-medicine. I just want to make that clear. But I constructed an idol. And I fell for scientism, which is to treat the scientific kind of methodology is the highest form of knowledge. And what did God do? He allowed me, he deconstructed that idol by showing that modern medicine and science almost killed your wife, and it certainly can't save you from death, and it's not going to heal you psychologically, philosophically, or spiritually. And I learned that from, and then that ended up sparking my interest in getting into critiques of technocracy and technology, and then I use my background in the philosophy of science. It's just interesting to see how it all came together.
Don't you think, I'm getting on tangent, but don't you think, Father, that when medical science and religion work together, that it can be very effective? I think if people rely completely on one or the other, it's not good. I mean, Saint Panteleimon is a good example. I mean, he was a physician, so of what medical knowledge they had at the time, he used it. So,
well, it's the same as like politics too. That think about in terms of orthodoxy, the only form of like political government that Orthodoxy's ever endorsed is symphonia.
Which
And
is
what
what,
that,
Father?
well, that's where you see like I wonder if I have an icon of the double-headed eagle.
Oh yeah, I know what that is. Yeah.
Now, the only way this has ever worked out, and again, it's only been endorsed, and that doesn't mean like we've got to force it on society. It'll never work that way, but as a Christian monarchy. And the reason why is because symphonia, like a symphony working together, two separate, so it's not a theocracy, two separate institutions working together in a symphony. So like two heads of an eagle, two separate spheres, two, I don't want to quote Luther, but two kingdoms. His thing was incorrect, but, and what that means is the statesman, the king, the president, whatever, is an Orthodox Christian, baptized. They receive their authority from the church. That's why the church does the coronation. Without the church, there is no political Christian state. However, the church does not dictate like what political policies. What the church does is it provides the faith as a guiding principle. Once you, so it's very natural. You are an Orthodox Christian and you have your principles. That is the guiding light for how a politician is supposed to work out their politics.
Mm.
While the church respects the autonomy, right? Because notice the priest works this way too. You come to the priest, Father, I'm having a problem with, oh, we've got a program for that. Here's what you do if you want to get better, which is why Christ asked the question that seemed maybe bizarre to all of us, to the paralytic, do you want to be healed? Well, of course you do. Do you want to actually be healed? There's a really profound question in that. The priest is asking the same thing. Do you want to be healed? But you have to want it.
Right.
I'm going to respect the autonomy. I'm not going to force that on you, but here's how it's done. So the church and state works that way too. And then the state stays out of the church. Also, I would say that same symphonia is exactly how we're supposed to do science and medicine. Science and medicine only works correctly. Now, it doesn't mean that we can't do at times, even a secular sense, can secular people get stuff right? And of course they can. But a broken clock's correct at least twice a day, right? But the ideal is, no, remember what scripture says, put forth the kingdom of God and the rest of these shall be added. It's all about priorities. We're Orthodox first and foremost. You acquire the Holy Spirit in Orthodoxy. You participate in the healing graces of the sacraments. That will put everything else into place. How you do medicine. You will be illumined, right? It is the light that illumines and puts everything in its correct place. So the idols, or when I put a political philosophy, a philosophy, an ethics, anything above the Orthodox Church, that this is how I understand Orthodoxy. This is my lens that I'm going to have to reinterpret. That's not how we do it. And I think that's been my criticism of Roman Catholicism too, is that Roman Catholicism historically has embraced kind of a Greek, particularly Aristotelian kind of metaphysics. That is their filter. That is their standard by which they interpret their theology. So they have to squish all the theology down into this kind of Aristotelian terms and stuff like that. We don't work that way. It's the faith first. It's the kingdom of God. That is the light that then allows us to see, how do we do good medicine? How do we do good science? How does it work out in the political sphere? So I'm in absolute agreement with, like, of course we can do good medicine, but it's unfortunate, even people in the Orthodox Church, they don't have that pride. They have it inverted. They put the secular ideas in secular science first, and then what do they say? Oh, Orthodoxy's in the dark ages and backwards. We've got to clean it up, right? In terms of my non-Orthodox secular man-made standard that I've come up with that's going to change and not being fad in another 10 years. That's what's always so hilarious. It cracks me up. Modern biblical scholars now say, we now know, right? Oh, wait, we don't. They've changed their mind, right? Now they changed their mind again. Like, that's your standard?
Yeah, nothing against the liturgy and the vernacular, but I go to, Rocore Parish where it's still in the Slavonic, and I like that. I like it that it's otherworldly. It feels old. It feels ancient. It feels, mystical. That's when I was Roman Catholic, I went to the Latin Mass because I got that same. It was sort of the same, but I don't know. In Russian Orthodoxy, it's different. It's deeper. I don't know, my connection, and it's sort of bizarre because it's sort of counterintuitive, because you have this iconostasis, which sort of hides a lot of what's going on, but my connection to God is more profound.
Yep. I think too, because
I don't know.
Well, I've thought about this too, and I haven't made up my mind exactly how it's supposed to work. It's supposed to work out organically. You can't like force. And I even think that's what common vernacular is, that you have people will force that on. We're going to have a unified, it's like, you can't, that's not how Orthodoxy works. I just got in a conversation with somebody where like, so you Orthodox support Christian monarchy. How are you going to force that? What king are you going to, it's like, that's not how it works. We're not political. We're not going to be like, well, we're going to change things and we're going to go out door to door, and it's just going to be the natural outpouring. It's going to be organic. When people acquire the spirit of Orthodoxy, these are the sort of things that happen. So then I was thinking with the language too, that's the way it's going to happen. Like, you can't just be like, we made a decision and this is what we're going to force it on the people. That's not how Orthodoxy works. And so I think the way the Church Slavonic occurred too is organically, and it's intertwined in history and theology. I think that's what you're kind of picking up on. And you see this like because different churches that I've been in that don't speak English, and using like different translation, like the Romanians would like argue over like word like Slava or Maria, like you're not supposed to use like that's, this means something like this, and it's got a little bit. So like what they would do is like Slava Tatălui și Fiului și Sfântului, do in the name of the Father, Son, glory to the Father, to the Son, to the Holy Spirit, or they'd sometimes do Maria Tatălui și Fiului. And I was like, well, translating in English, it just says the same thing. Glory to the Father and to the Son, to the Holy Spirit. Then you start talking to Romanians, they're like, you want to like, Slava's higher than Maria. Like that's, like this is what you give to God. Like, but if you say to the Theotokos, you may give the salutation Maria, like she's below the Trinity, but she's high in glory. Like, and it was like all these kind of like interesting theological nuances that I realized. I'm like, yeah, if you change the language, you lose that. And so I'm thinking you're probably picking up on that one of the reasons why the Russians haven't given up on the Slavonic is that you would lose not only kind of the history, but a lot of deep theological significance on the little nuances too. I think that's important.
I think the Latin had sort of the same effect too. I think when you take it out of English, it takes you in a different state of mind. It's like this is a language that we use here. It's different. It's sort of, it takes you out of the world that you live in, where you're speaking English.
Yeah.
And you're conversing, and entertainment is English, and I don't know. It gives it a more unique character. It's special. So.
Yeah, exactly. Anyways, that's my thoughts for whatever they're worth on that issue.
I want to real quick, Father. Gosh, I've taken up so much of your time, and I haven't even talked about
I
your
know.
writing yet. I printed this article out. It's called An Eastern Orthodox Understanding of the Dangers of Modernity and Technology. Now, when I print something out off the internet, that means I'm taking it pretty seriously, and
Nice.
it's difficult for me to read. I'm glad, Father, that on your patristic faith website that you're not afraid to be like intellectual, because from the contributors on patristic faith and just sort of from the design of the website, which is really good, I kind of assumed that you're trying to attract like or appeal to like male Orthodox readers. Is that true? Or
We've got, like, if you look at the stats, we get almost 50-50. Somebody was bringing this up. It was a priest. He's like, I love your stuff. I can't understand half the stuff you're saying. I went to seminary. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Like, I can actually write, and I might actually start just putting kind of meditations and homilies up that aren't as erudite and technical. But when a lot of this stuff kind of comes up, like the reason why I published those articles is because there's people critiquing stuff about Orthodoxy, and so when I'm in the mode of argumentation, it might get very technical like that. So there is kind of a particular, first and foremost, I'm trying to develop like a sophisticated, developed argument, and it's kind of hard not to. So it ends up being kind of difficult to read, because to do a good argument, get through all the kind of you're just going to be required to do that. But I wanted to also appeal to people who find that interesting. So I don't want to exclude anybody, but like, it's just given the nature of kind of doing apologetics and philosophical work, arguing for controversial positions, and it's kind of going to go that route.
Well, I like it. It challenges me, and I think there's kind of a space in Roman Catholicism where they've tried to do like men's spirituality or something, and it a lot of times it comes off as kind of very
cheesy.
very very self-aware, where they're like doing the battle cry from 300 Spartans, talking about it. It just gets it gets more into like the men's movement. It's just kind of weird. But so I liked your approach. It was really good. So when I was reading your article, actually the footnotes were much more challenging than the actual text. But I love footnotes because in my book I have like over 300 footnotes. So
yeah, I love footnotes too. It's all the stuff that I can fit in.
I love it, or endnotes or whatever.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about, I think it was last year, also into this year, in popular culture or in American culture, there's been a concern, especially among conservatives, about parents' rights in education. Yeah. And it came up in Loudoun County, I think it was Virginia, and then it's been in the news in Florida a lot. So I think it's really good. But then I was thinking about the issue of technology. So parents are very concerned about rightly very concerned about what their teachers are discussing with their children in public school. But then I'm thinking about technology where I don't think children should have smartphones.
No.
So I mean, they can have a flip phone if you need to call them. But parents are rightly concerned about education in schools, but what are kids learning off of these? And to me, this is much more concerning than, I mean, they're both issues that I think parents should address, but I don't think a teacher in a public school, well, I don't know now with that genderqueer book, I don't think a teacher in a public school could get away maybe with showing kids hardcore pornography, although that genderqueer book is certainly qualified. But they can access it on here. So this is the issue of technology that I don't think people
And they
have.
are pushing that. I mean, it's bordering on pornography. Before I left California, I know that in the Brea Olinda school district, I mean, in grade school, they were teaching pedophilia as a legitimate lifestyle. Now, I had been saying this for 25 years, that I'm like, if you allow for this homo stuff to come in, now people are like, well, that's a slippery slope. It's like, no, you're not understanding. You're removing any kind of moral obstacle so that everything's just arbitrary. It's like, well, if that's gone, then why not, right? You don't have a position, you don't have a moral philosophical position to stand and say this stuff's wrong, but this stuff's allowed when you do that. So it's inevitable that it will go in, and it has. And so, you know, and then the drag stuff too, like, I mean, that's borderline pornography, and teaching the children about, like, you know, God forgive me, certain sexual positions and sexual acts. And this is in grade school. That's happening in California. And I even had some Orthodox who work in public schools, and of course they're liberal, like, at like, public schools are great, and like, we don't have this problem. It's like, you know what, you can't from, like, maybe you're out in the middle of nowhere. There are some good public schools where you don't actually have this stuff going on, but that's really an exception to the rule. It's kind of a minority. And you look in California, New York, Washington, like the big kind of, this stuff's going on. And then, yeah, asking about, like, how is technology being used? I was thinking about this a couple days ago and kind of came to some starting conclusions. Do you know there's a large percent of society that says they don't have an inner monologue? And
No,
I was
I
like,
didn't.
trying to
I didn't
figure
know
out what that meant. And I was like, I just kind of I thought inner monologue was thoughts. Like, that's how
a conscience.
I was like, are people reporting they don't have thoughts? I'm like, this is weird. And then I started thinking about it some more, and I started realizing, well, of course they have thoughts, but when I think of monologue, what it presents itself is, there's sort of kind of like a meta level. There's a consciousness about my thought that presents itself back to myself in the form of kind of a monologue or even a dialogue. So it's an awareness of my thoughts. And that's what monologue is. And then I made an interesting conclusion and connection. It said these people who report not having an inner monologue also tend to not be introspective or self-aware. And I'm like, oh, so it is confirming what I thought. And I was thinking, well, how does that happen? And then I was thinking about the connection to technology and how we're learning. It really has kind of take a behavioralist model of behaviorism, thinking that, like, there's no inner private mental life. To have a thought that it's raining is simply given the stimulus, i.e. that it's raining, I do certain things, or are disposed to do certain things, namely carry an umbrella outside and close the window. And that's all it is to have a thought. Well, notice there is no inner introspection, awareness. And if that's the model, especially in technology and pedagogy, using technology to manipulate or program, Pavlovian programming of, here, we're going to use technology in this certain way. And we know this happens on social media through kind of dopamine hits and group social pressure to get people to think a certain way. And just a very short period of time through this kind of behavioral Pavlovian manipulation, is it any surprise to us that now a percentage of society is actually reporting not only do they not have an ability to do introspection, they don't even have inner monologue. I mean, we're literally reducing ourselves to animals and machines. I have a thought, I do this, but right. That is scary. I just came up with this a couple days ago, and it kind of ties to exactly what we're talking about.
And I don't want, you're not a crank or not anti-tech, because I mean, you use technology effectively to
Yes, exactly.
convey the
I'm
truth.
not anti-science, and a lot of people are like,
No.
"This anti-science, deacon."
So, because you said something very interesting in this, and I highlighted it, and you're writing about technology. The best things corrupted become the worst.
Yeah, that was a line from Augustine's City of God.
I really like that. I was like, yeah, that's it. Because I think technology has incredible power for good.
Yes.
But I think I sound like I'm a yin and yang person, but conversely, I think the power of evil is limitless. It's pretty bad. Well, I mean, pornography plays a big part in my story, but in the 1980s, it was so different. You didn't have the internet. You had like cable TV, VCRs, and magazines. And I mean, that was potent enough to twist my mind pretty severely. So
But you still had to kind of work to find that. I was thinking about that.
You did. You had to steal it.
It wasn't knocking on your door at every corner that like you're being bombarded with. Yeah.
No, I used to steal it as a kid. I'd go in the liquor store and steal it, or whatever, go in the video store and steal it. And or friends would have it, and we would just trade and have it at school. And here I'm at parochial Catholic school. So yeah, it took more cooperation of the will, I guess. You really had to want to get it.
Yes.
Yeah. And but I mean, it was a certain grade of pornography. I mean, there's no good pornography or bad pornography. It's all bad as far as I'm concerned.
But it gets worse. Yeah.
It does. I mean, in terms of graphic nature, I can't comprehend what's available to children now. And I think we're seeing just the beginnings of the ramifications of that, because people can't be exposed to that sort of imagery and not have their mind affected. And I was just looking at this morning. I think it was somebody, was it Ben Shapiro? Somebody on Twitter. The rising percentage of young people who identify as LGBTQ, and I'm Gen Z, X, and I think for us it was about 4 or 5%, which is still above the actual number. The actual number is about 2. So, but now looking at, I think it was Gen Z, 20%.
That's crazy.
This is madness. And I'm thinking, well, what has changed? Well, of course, technology.
Yeah.
Because that sort of, I mean, I think gay marriage has a lot to do with it too, because that normalized, for people, aberrant behavior and unhealthy behavior. But I think a lot of it is just technology, because they're exposed to so much of it, either through pornography or just the secular mainstream media, that it's normalized now. It's not pathologized anymore.
Yes. And I think sexuality in general, I mean, I get so upset. I can't even find a show to watch on TV where there's not basically a long pornographic like sex scene. It's like, oh, here we go. And I've got to fast forward. So everything's just sexualized, and kids they can't get away from that. They're seeing that. And then you have like full-on agendas, and then promulgated through the media of normalizing homosexual relations, sexual. So it's like, not only is the sex not bad, it's completely normalized. Any kind of sex goes. And also, I think too, what was really interesting through the technology is that the homosexual community is disproportionately represented. That's another way to normalize. So if they're actually something like when we were growing up 2%, then why is there a gay couple on every single episode? It's like, we got to throw the gay couple, we got to put the gay couple in the TV ad here. Well, you, I guess, naturally growing up would think that, man, there's a lot of gay, this is just normal. Like half the population's gay and that's okay. I think that's really what happened. And as you said,
yeah.
through technology.
A lot of
So
that's-
then if you don't, you're using that, then is, we're always using ideas as lenses and filters to interpret the world. So you have certain temptations or sexual feelings and different stuff like that. I mean, imagine if you're a woman and you were traditionally what would be categorized as a tomboy. I'd like to play baseball and, you know, work on, you know, the engine of my 57 dad's 57 Chevy pickup truck. Nobody would have thought anything about that 50 years ago. Now it's like, well, you're a lesbian, right? Like that's obviously
Oh,
like,
father, they've gone beyond that. And I don't want to go into the trans issue, but now they say, yeah, you're transgender.
Yeah.
I think 20 years ago, they would have said you're gay. Now they say, yeah, like a feminine boy 20 years ago would have been gay. And now they say,
now
well, no,
trans.
you're a girl. Yeah.
So notice what they did though. They used that normalization, then they put that kind of idea as your interpretive standard of reality, like, because without an idea, everything's just sense that you don't understand how to interpret that. So I think they've done that on purpose. So now that's why you're probably getting larger percentages of identifying is they don't know how to interpret any of this stuff. They're literally being told what to think and how to interpret reality.
Yeah, I think it goes back to technology and the availability of pornography, because as the availability of pornography has gone up, sexual crimes have also gone up.
Yeah.
So yeah, as a result, you're going to have more children who have been sexually abused. And there have been studies that have shown that there's a very strong correlation between childhood sexual abuse and the later manifestation of homosexuality.
Oh,
so
absolutely,
yeah. So I mean, it's almost 50% of gay men were molested by a man as a child. So as you have more availability of pornography, more sex crimes, you're also going to have more people identifying as LGBTQ.
And by the way, when I wrote that line from Augustine, optima corrupta pessima, the best things corrupted become the worst, I was actually thinking about like here, like sexual things. Here, God gives us, I mean, what greater gift than a blessed, you know, marriage? The conjugal act produces life, a child. Like that is amazing. That is truly divine. And yet, if you mess with that and corrupt it, it becomes the worst. I mean, one of the greatest gifts, the best gifts when it's corrupted is. So I was actually thinking exactly what you were probably thinking when you read that.
Yeah. There's another line that I thought was really important. You wrote, as history has shown over and again, when a culture abandons objective truth and morality, it removes its primary defenses against tyranny, and truth is replaced with power. I was thinking about that. I was really thinking about that very, very deeply. And, you know, this is what I interpreted as. I think a lot of people, because there's no cultural foundation on truth and morality right now, everything's relativistic. So I think people have this instinctual drive and desire for those things, for truth, morality. So I think if culture doesn't provide that, they drift towards these sort of simulacrums or these replacements for that truth and morality. And I mean, people find it in now these subcultures. And, you know, I found it in the gay subculture, because it had a certain truth and it had, I mean, it's a twisted morality, but it had a certain morality. And then people find it also in these political
Yeah,
movements.
absolutely. I think about this all the time. That I'm like, man should be defined as homo religiosus or something like that. Not the rational man, but the religious man. It's like, it doesn't matter. Like, if you disregard a religion, you're going to make something else a religion. With the this is why you see in the, these political right and left and all these different things, they've, like you said, or subgroups, the gay, like, they've got their own. I mean, you have it even in the criminal world too, right? Criminals have their own kind of like ceremonies and
Their own code
and morality that they hold to, and principles and standards. It's like, it's impossible to, you can't be non-religious. It's just impossible.
And what technology has played the part is because you've seen a proliferation of these subcultures, because online you can find a community for any sort of deviance that you can imagine. It's there. And it's also that's also very intricately tied with pornography, which all these subcategories of pornography. So people that are in search of all these fetishes, it becomes a community. And then that everything that they lack in terms of spirituality and family and relationships, that replaces. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there's kind of a loss of identity. And I had to come to this kind of realization too, that it's because of inadequacies and vices in my own life that I actually then overcompensated. It went the wrong direction, but I was extremely insecure of I didn't think I was smart, just kind of given my upbringing, stuff like that, that I felt weird, like, oh, I'm a weirdo, like I'm not smart, like I had insecurities. I was scared to death to approach a girl because I was like, I'm ugly, I'm not smart, blah blah blah. Like, and maybe this is a typical like teenage thing that most people go through, but I just couldn't get in my friends. I'm like, God, they seem like so sure of themselves. I don't know how you get to that. Well, part of what I did to compensate for that is I will make myself the exact opposite than what I feel. I'll become the philosopher, the philosophy professor. And that's my identity. That's who I associated with. And it's a bunch of nonsense. I'm not a philosophy professor. Nobody is anything other than to be truly human, and your identity is to be made in the image of Christ. All this other stuff is all just a bunch of distractions and not real. And then it gave me some kind of insights into, well, this is exactly what everybody's doing, right? There's something messed up and wrong in us, and we can't find our identity outside of our true identity outside of Christ. And so, but people try. So these subgroups, notice, then become identities. This is who you are. So it's not that I just associate with a group. You are this, like, which is insane to me now I think about it. Your thoughts on that?
That's it. And you see that in Twitter, where people put not so much pronouns, but they'll put their identity in there. And so it's the fetish or the subgroup or the subculture, you're right, becomes their identity. Because for me, that was very strong when I went to the gay community. It was everything to me. It was my religion, it was my family, it was my identity. And then see, at that time in the 80s and 90s, you didn't have technology again, but I mean, you had a certain amount of it. You had gay periodicals, you had gay movies. That time you sort of had gay TV shows like Will and Grace and that sort of stuff coming around. That you have there's all these accoutrements that come along with that identity. And now it's so much. I mean, kids can go online and find all sorts of, trans this, trans that. And
It's
so
just interesting that
it
would you think that, like, because I was even thinking, like, you see, like, I guess there's some sort of identity that people associate. Like, suppose like you identified with, like, I'm a punk rocker,
yeah.
like, kind of in a loose way, but somebody maybe not in a like a bit, if you ask somebody like that's all you that like that's a pure identity, you're nothing more than a punk, they would say, well, no, I just associate, this is my group, this is my kind of family or
Well,
something like that.
there's an aesthetic that goes along with that.
Yeah,
It's a way of dressing, it's a way of acting, your
yeah,
hair, everything. There's a whole aesthetic culture that
yeah,
goes along with like being a punk rocker. And then there is with gay too, or
yeah.
trans. There's you see them
But
with
I think it's stronger,
the
like,
pink and purple hair, and there's an identity that
yeah.
goes along with that. There's a quote in one of the Doctina elders that I really liked that goes with that. Where is it? I really love it. There's these quotes that just
Oh, they're great.
they're so short and so awesome.
I know, that's the best one.
This is Saint Nicole again. Sin leaves its mark not only on the soul but also on the exterior of a person, on his
Wow.
outward appearance and behavior. So that when I read
That's
that,
so true.
I was like, yeah, because it changes the way you look.
Absolutely. Somebody was asking me this the other day, like, why does the left purposely tend to look so ugly? And I mean,
Yeah.
not, but in the sense of like kind of like mutilation, right? Like,
Somebody on Twitter said that, conservative, I don't know if they said it in a crass way, but they said, conservative women tend to be nicer looking
yeah,
than
well, it's like they didn't throw like, rings through their, every place on their face and cut their hair. Like, and I think my wife was asking me, do they know that they're like, is it defined so they know that they're looking ugly, like making themselves ugly? And I'm like, I don't think they're that aware. Like, I think it's reactionary to whatever that look and aesthetic is. We're not that. And so I'm doing this. But it's exactly what you said. The ideology takes an external expression. And I've been thinking about this a lot too, just in terms of, and it doesn't even just have to be like sociological or like political. It could even be philosophical, that if you're angry all the time, maybe your philosophy or politics is bad, like your worldview is incorrect. Like, because I'm looking at the saints, and no matter how bad the world gets, like, they're at peace, and I want that. I'm a very practical man in some sense of like, well, if it's producing that, I want some of that, right? And I don't want to be angry and pissed off and like an angry, scowling face all the time. Like, whatever ideology does and philosophy does that, I don't want any of that, and I want some of this stuff over here.
when I always say people have this hole in the middle of their soul right here, and when you buy into the lie, thinking that whatever I'm going to ascribe to on earth is going to fill that,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't, you get pissed
Yeah.
because I did. And then you see people that are fulfilled, like a religious person that's truly fulfilled,
And
like
then you get angry.
you get mad at them.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I was there. I was there. I want to tie this in, this discussion we're having right now, real quick, because you talk about in your article, you talk about dehumanization. That was very important. And then this line that you had, it was right at the end. You had God has been replaced with humanism, and humanism has now been replaced with transhumanism. I mean, I think I understand what you're talking about, because I listened to a couple of podcasts you did on the demonic,
Yeah.
and I think this is the root of all of this. You talked about this, and this, gosh, there's a couple of points I want to hit here. And I don't want to, because my mind is getting jumbled already. I'm trying to juggle all this stuff. You, in one of those videos, you talked about that evil is self-destructive. And I was like, yeah, Father's totally right about that. And I think that goes to what I was just talking about how it changes your appearance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when people get angry because whatever lie they bought into, whether it's homosexuality or drug use or some other gender identity, that when they make all these sacrifices, because there are sacrifices to make
Mm-hmm.
in that life, um, and you're not fulfilled, you do become self-destructive because you hate not only other people, but you ultimately hate yourself and you hate being. You hate
That's
being it's
absolutely true. And
and that's self-destruction.
I forget what elder said. It was like a monk that I was speaking to recently. I can't remember. The problem is we Orthodox all say the same stuff. So it's like, well, which Orthodox was and that's a good thing. But they had said that really this hatred towards other is stems from because I hate myself. What I hate in the other person, like when I hate, it really is a mirror of yourself, that like I hate myself and that's why I hate you. Now they're not that aware about it, but you know what I mean, that conscious about it, but that's what's going on. You're absolutely right.
Another thing that you talked about too, and you were trying to accentuate this in this talk, and I don't know if you really fleshed it out or um, not that. I guess I wish that you would have talked about it more because there's certain like buzzwords that perked up, hit my brain right here. Like self-destruction is one of them. And then you talked about deception, self-deception. And I was like, yes, that's deception is like really, where's this? I've got a, here it is. This is from Father Seraphim Rose. Disillusionment, in a sense, is preferable to self-deception. It may, if taken as an end in itself, lead to suicide or madness, but it may also lead to an awakening. That's so true. That's so true because deception, and you I think you were talking about people that have certain religious experience or any kind of profound sort of transcendental or whatever sort of experience, and they don't understand what role deception might play. Because when I got, and a lot of people that I knew, when I got convinced of some lie that I believed was true, I didn't believe that I was being deceived in
Yes.
in any way. I thought I had found the truth. I've got another quote here that I really love. Where is it? Okay, this is Bishop Ignatius, who I don't know much about, but Father Seraphim Rose quotes him a lot. We are all in deception. The knowledge of this is the greatest preventative against deception. It is the greatest deception to acknowledge oneself to be free of deception.
Yeah. I think Orthodoxy only has, I talk about this all the time, that um, I don't even know if it's present in Roman Catholicism. It certainly is not present in Protestantism, but prelist, like spiritual delusion. And there's a sort of kind of like phenomenology, right, that's pervasive within things are the way they present themselves. A student had said this in class the other day that in ethics, well, who knows what's best for them other than the person themselves? And I'm like, well, that's a weird thing to say. How many times, like, what's your track record? The things that you thought were good for you actually turned out being good, and vice versa. The things that you just thought were terrible, could never be salvaged, actually turned out. And that should show you don't really know what you're talking about. But we have built in within us this kind of thing of, I don't even have an operating system they can identify that there is even such a thing as self-delusion. And Orthodoxy gives you that. It's like, well, we're constantly in self-delusion. Now you know it. Now that you know it, maybe you can actually identify it, because you can't identify it. You will always fall for, like you said, the lie. If you think that, well, this is God speaking to me, this is obviously the truth, right? I don't even have a concept of possibly being deceived, then you're always going to fall for the lie. And I just find that beautiful about Orthodoxy, is that we have the operating program to identify prelates and self-delusion and these things. And that's how we're going to get better.
Yeah, it's really tough, because I think there's certain like mantras that I keep going back to. I mean, because this is my frame of reference a lot of times, is that people that are young and are maybe struggling with their sexuality, they're told that, well, they were born that way. Now, what's super nefarious, and this is ultimately why I had to bail on Roman Catholicism, is that it's not just in Roman Catholicism, but it's in other religions too. United Church of Christ is where they say, well, God made you that way. God made you a certain way. And that becomes a religious dogma for them.
Yes.
And it was for me. To get people to budge out of that, it's nearly impossible. It's very, very difficult. I mean, unless, like Father Seraphim says, that's why he prefers disillusionment over self-deception, because sometimes people do become disillusioned.
Yeah.
And I mean, I did. I became like, I don't think this is working, and I don't think a lot of these things are true. And I was disillusioned with what I believed. And then he's right, that does lead to an awakening.
Well, that's exactly what happened with me, right? This is just idols, right? Like you said, to replace what we should be focusing on, which is Christ and Orthodoxy. But to, construct these systems. I built a philosophical system. I remember my wife actually critiquing me. Thank God for my wife. Like, she keeps me in line. But I remember working through these things, even in grad school. I'm like, I think I got it. I'm just putting all the pieces. Finally got the religion to work out, right, that I constructed. And I remember she's like, this is ridiculous. Like, nobody could be expected to do something like that. And that's all I was doing my whole life, system building and constructing these Tower of Babels and idols. And here's my scientism now, and I built this, and it can compute. And amen, praise God for when we become disillusioned, when that stuff starts to crack and fall apart and be like, this is nonsense.
Exactly.
I'd rather be in that state of, like the Father says, of disillusion than delusion.
Yeah. And this has all the trappings of religion, because next month is June, and that is Pride Month. I mean, it's a whole month. It's not just a day. And in San Francisco, where I am here, and I haven't outreached in a long time, mainly because of COVID, but I used to go and outreach at Pride. But when you see that parade come down Market Street, and you don't think there are religious processions anymore in the United States, that is a religious procession.
Oh, absolutely. It always mimics, all these things always mimic the religious, yeah, good point.
I mean, with the floats and the banners and the reverence paid for this spectacle, that's what it struck me as when I first.
And also clerical outfits and.
Oh yeah,
big
time. And then even if you go even deeper into some of these subcultures, they have things like the St. Andrew's cross, and yeah, it's very strange. It becomes a sort of reenactment of Christian martyrdom. So this was a footnote in your book, and Engelhardt You quoted
Yeah,
him a lot.
that's so here's one of his books, After God. Here's one of his other. So he was a mentor of mine. He was actually Roman Catholic.
Seriously.
Worked for he's since reposed. He's one of the world's leading bioethicists. He worked as one of the leading bioethicists at the Vatican. He actually converted from Roman Catholicism to Orthodoxy. And you know, I would go to his conference every year. And he was really a mentor. In fact, at that monastery I told you about, where I think our miracle began of healing. So it's all kind of interrelated.
Yeah, well, you piqued my interest. I'm going to read some of the stuff. You quoted him here: the secular fundamentalist state becomes a surrogate of God. And I guess that's what I've been arguing.
Yeah.
That in all these different niche cultures, that's what happens.
Yep, that's exactly.
Find a surrogate for God. What I'm obsessed with the Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. I love that book.
So good.
Because I think a lot of people are confused, and I kind of want to end like with this. A lot of people are confused about freedom, the idea of freedom. And I think freedom is a good thing. I mean, with Elon Musk buying Twitter, I think people are talking about freedom a lot, freedom of speech. Freedom of speech is, you know, a good thing. But we have to look, I think, at freedom and its ramifications. And when I think of freedom, sometimes I think of like the sexual revolution and sexual freedom. This is from the Brothers Karamazov. The world has proclaimed the reign of freedom, especially of late. But what do we see in this freedom of theirs? Nothing but slavery and self-destruction.
Yeah. That's what Plato says too. Too much freedom is slavery.
I think about that because I think about the world that I used to inhabit, was the gay world, and sometimes the hardcore gay world. And what I saw was the more sexual freedom that they had, the more they reverted to slavery. And I mean, you see this too, not so much recently, but in the past culture, there was such a, like with 30 Shades of Grey and all that stuff, there was a real interest in bondage and all that. I don't want to get too deep into it, but it's the more freedom people have, the more they long for constraint. And it goes in a very unhealthy way, like that way in the sexual sphere. But I think it can go in a healthy way. And I would say towards orthodoxy, which, you know, provides you that sort of constraint. Because I think everybody needs to be constrained. Yeah, go ahead, Father.
Well, it's exactly what you're saying about as far as constraint. The lie of the devil in the world is that freedom's the be-all end-all. That's like the supreme ultimate virtue to like achieve, and that's that's destructive. So I guess we would say in Orthodoxy, we respect autonomy and freedom, but that's not the highest priority. Becoming whole and becoming human and becoming healed is the highest priority. So you know, in one sense, you could say, you know, you are free to do whatever you want, but you're not free from consequences. So I think that we situate freedom and autonomy in the correct position, whereas the world and the devil is like, you should be free of all constraints. Nothing should. That is complete, unbridled, incorrect freedom that's actually leads to perversion and destruction. I think you're absolutely right.
Hey, thank you, Father.
Well, God bless you. Christ is risen.
Indeed, he is risen.
Keep up your good work.
For being generous, Father.
Yeah, you're doing good work, and keep me in your prayers. And I'm honored to to have, you have me on your show. And thank you for all your support and prayers. Awesome.
Hey, God bless you, Father.
God bless you. Thank you so much, Joseph. Talk to you soon.
God bless you.